All right, so you're probably wondering who in the world in all of history could possibly be stronger than Louis Cyr or Paul Anderson. I mean, those are the guys, right? And like I said, I may be wrong, but just from what I've read, this stuff seems harder to me than the stuff I saw them do, although the stuff they did was insane. So I might just be misinterpreting the data. But the person I have number one on the list here is Angus MacAskill. I might have grossly mispronounced that. He was known as the giant MacAskill or Black Angus. He was born in 1825. They don't even have a date. They just know he was born in 1825. He was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records in 1981 as the tallest non-giant ever in history. Like, most people that get really, really tall have giantism, but not everybody. Like Andre the Giant, Paul White, who played The Big Show, the Great Khali, what Dalip Singh, whatever his name is, Richard Kiel, who played Jaws on James Bond. Those guys all have giantism. They like kind of lumber around. Oh, the big guy that played in Billy Crystal's movie, My Giant, and they like Sung Ming, the 7'9" basketball player that was in Rush Hour 3. All those guys have giantism. They it's like kind of like a defect in the pituitary gland where it just keeps releasing growth hormone, and if they don't do something like take surgery or something to make it stop, they'll basically just die. Like Robert Waldo died at like age 22.3 or something because he just kept growing and growing and his bones kept getting more and more brittle, and he was like 8'11" when he died, tallest man ever recorded in history. So, but not every really, really tall person has giantism. Like Manute Bol, he was 7'7", he didn't have giantism. And Mark Eaton, who played for Utah Jazz, was 7'4", he didn't have it. Sean Bradley and Yao Ming both didn't have giantism, and they were 7'6". So not everybody really, really tall has giantism, but a lot of people do. So anyway, this guy was 7'9", 425 pounds. So at 7'9", he was the tallest non-giant ever in history. And I don't believe all the stats they have for him, but I'm just going to list them. But I definitely think the shoulder width one for certain is bogus. But they claim at 7'9", 425 pounds that he had the biggest chest measurement of a non-obese person ever at 80 inches, which may or may not be right. I'm good with math and doing formulas. If I was his height, I'd be roughly about twice my size, which would put me in a similar weight range. I'd be a little bit heavier. And if I was that size, my chest would only be around 60 inches. And when I look at the pictures, he doesn't look that much more massive than me, but maybe at that size, 20 inches doesn't fill you out as much. But that's still enough that I think even with that kind of size to spread around, he would look bigger. So I don't think that's really accurate. The other things are probably all true except for the shoulder width. That one's crazy nuts bogus. You can just tell by the pictures. So they said he had 16-inch long by 8-inch wide feet, which is really, really wide. I have wide feet. I have to get like quadruple E's for my width if I want my shoes to fit really comfortable. I might not really. I always like things to be nice and comfortable, so I could probably wear tighter if I had a more snug fit, but my feet are only about 4.5 to maybe 5 inches wide, so he had really, really wide feet, and my feet are also like 5 inches shorter than his were, and I wear 12s and 13s, so he had huge, huge feet. His hands were gigantic. They were like from where this bottom where the wrist meets the forearm and you have that little line to the tip of his middle finger was 12 inches. And I have bigger hands than a lot of people, and mine are only 8 inches. And then they were 8 inches wide, and mine are only about 5 inches wide. So that's just to give some perspective. He just had giant hands. And then they said his wrist circumference is 13.5 inches, which is the biggest I've ever heard of. Like Louis Cyr and Paul Anderson both had gigantic wrists, as well as Hulk Hogan and a few other big people like Andre the Giant, but none of them had wrists like that. I think Andre the Giant's were the biggest of all those people I mentioned, and his were 11. So yeah, that's crazy. They said that his ankles were 18 inches, which is crazy. So to give some perspective again, my wrist is only like 7 inches, and my forearm, I think, is right around 13.5 inches. So his wrist was that big. And then 18 inches is big. Like, my calves are 17 inches, so his ankles were bigger than my calves. That's crazy. Anyway, some of the feats of strength he did were just incredible. They seem unbelievable, but they're recorded down in history, and I don't know if they are exaggerated or whatnot, but if they're true, this is the reason I have them above the two strength legends that I respect so much. But maybe things got amplified over time. They said he could hold 110 kilos with 2 fingers out at arm's length for 10 minutes. That doesn't seem realistic to me. I realize he's an enormous man, and that 110 pounds isn't as big proportionately to him as it is to other people, but he's 7'9", so he has a really long arm. And this is a bad lift to start with. The leverage is horrible, but the taller you are and the longer your arm is, the worse the leverage is. You used to see that in the old school strongest man contests. Like, some of the taller competitors would really struggle at this event, even though they were super strong, and would kind of dominate in other events. So there was a real famous strongman. His name was Jeffrey Capes. He was like one of the top 3. This was at a time when him and John Paul Sigerstrom were just dominating, and then Bill Kazmaier made a comeback, and they were always in the top 3. And that event always killed him because he was at least 6'5", and that's just a really bad leverage when you have long arms like that. So it's hard for me to believe that a 7'9" man can do that. But if he did, that's just a testament to how insanely strong he was. Another thing he did was pick a horse up over a 4-foot tall fence. Just whoosh, whoosh. That's pretty crazy. He also set a 40-foot long mast into a schooner all by himself. But the two things that really stuck out to me, unless there's some other that I might have missed. Nope, it's just these two. One, he took a 350-pound barrel under each arm, and this is one of the things where his height was his asset instead of working against him, because his arms were so long, he could get a better hold than a normal person. But still, you think 350, that's 700 pounds. And he's just walking along with 700 pounds carrying these big barrels. That's craziness. Like, I can't think of anybody that could do that. And again, it's probably because he's 7'9". Like, I don't think anybody else would have the arm length to have that snugly held against their body, whereas with his arms being so long, he could probably pull it off. So that just was crazy. And then the biggest thing he did was pick a 2,800-pound anchor up to his chest. And you're probably like, well, Louis Cyr backlifted over 4,000 pounds, and Paul Anderson back lifted over 6,000 pounds. And I'd be like, yes, they did awesome heavy lifts with a tiny range of motion. But none of them have ever taken something super gigantic off the ground and brought it all the way up to their chest. Like Paul Anderson was doing huge 1,200 pound squats. Louis Cyr was like doing all these big, huge things, like lifting 535 with one finger and pressing huge things overhead and pushing carts up incline. They were doing awesome stuff, but 2,800 pounds, and he's 7'9", so his chest height is like way up here, like above my head. It's a big range of motion for 2,800 pounds. That's crazy. I can't even comprehend that. Like, I've never dealt with that kind of weight. I can't move that kind of weight. And knowing what like 855 feels like in a quarter squat, if you tripled that, it's still less than 2,800 pounds. And that just boggles my mind that anybody took that from the ground and brought it all the way up to their chest. So that's why I put him at number 1, because that floors me. It's insane. Like I said, maybe because he was born in 1825, it was one of those things where the legend grew and things got amplified, because all these things sound impossible to me, but whatever he did to even get the legend started, he obviously was a super strong man. And it's just cool to see what the pinnacle of human performance can go up to.